Showtime.
Welcome back to the Enjoy the Walk podcast, guys. I hope you guys had a good weekend wherever you spent it. Dante, it seems like we're getting closer and closer just by the conversation that's going around on the national scale. We might get golf back hopefully soon. I know it seems like, we look around and, you in New Jersey and me in Maryland, we're in a place of like kind of, we're almost ostracized from the rest of the country. Most of the country sees golf being played right now in some way, shape, or form. New York just being instituted back private courses, California seeing some golf. So I think we're close. I think we're very close.
We're getting there. I'm hoping the next couple of weeks we'll see it. I wish it was tomorrow, but I mean, you just gotta keep looking at the data and keep plugging through and just hoping for the best.
No doubt. Well, excited to do this interview today. I think this one's been a long time coming. This is a guy that we know very well, and have kind of had a very good impact, at least on my side of things, on where my collegiate career took place, and the fun times that we've had on and off the golf course up in northeastern Pennsylvania. So excited to bring on the former assistant director of athletics and recreation at Marywood University, but more importantly, the guy who convinced me to go to Marywood and play golf, and my golf coach during the time there. So excited to have Eric Grundman on the show. Eric, how are things going?
Dalton, it's going great. It's great to be here, Dalton and Dante. Went from, as you mentioned, a coach and an assistant AD at Marywood University. I'm now in southwestern Virginia, about 25 miles west of Roanoke, in a town called Ferrum, Virginia, and I have been named and began last Monday my first week in a new life. I was named the Senior Officer of Enrollment Management, in charge of the entire enrollment management division, financial aid, admissions and retention at Ferrum College. So I'm excited to start a new chapter in my life, but I'm probably more excited to be with two of my guys and two Marywood alums.
Yeah, there's that's exciting news for you, and I think just something that fits you very well, just kind of, being around you in the past for so long. And, you're very good at just in the recruitment side of what you did at your job, and excited to see how you thrive down there in Virginia. So, let's dive into how we got started and where we met at Marywood and the golf team. When I stepped on campus, it was a very new golf team. It was just transitioning from club to an NCAA sport at the time. What was it like for you kind of taking the reins of a new program like that?
Dalton, correct me if I'm wrong. Was that when you came aboard, was that our second year?
I believe so. That's correct. There was one competitive year already played.
It was our second year, and our first recruit was Frank Major, Frank Major the fourth, who I'm sure we'll talk about as we move along. But starting the program was a very unique experience for me. I was bestowed that honor, and quite literally an honor, by the Marywood administration, and it was a little easier than you might think. And one of the reasons it was a little easier than you might think is because we had a club program prior to that. And the club program, I was the coach or manager or leader of the club program. And we had two young men, specifically one, Stan Kania, who spent quite a bit of time at my office door trying to convince myself, trying to convince our administration that golf, one, should become a club sport, and then it should become an NCAA certified varsity sport. Stan Kania was instrumental just with his persistence, and his brother decided to come to Marywood, and I believe Paul played with us for 1 year of club golf, and in doing so, that second year, having somebody as solid a player as Paul was, and Stan in his own right as well, but having somebody who legitimized the program our first year, and we were able to sell the program to those first few recruits. The first one, literal recruit being Frank Major. It was just kind of a little bit of a snowball type of effect. From Stan Kania helping to start the program came Paul. From Paul came Frank. From Frank came you. From you came Mike Thomas and Nick Biondi. And from those two came Jesse Bingaman. And from that came an incredible group of young men. And there were other young men along the way, too, that were a part of the program and always will be a part of the program. I think at one point at our apex in terms of numbers, we were at 12. And all of those gentlemen together were able to come together and form a group. And I think we've kind of recruited each other in a sense.
Yeah, it became a family very quickly. Even from before the time that I got there, officially, even in the walk around, when I've kind of just made my official visit and just met Paul, met Frank, Frank being an architecture major like myself that I was interested in at the time and ended up graduating as an architecture major. It was one of those things that I just found a relation with Frank and with you and with the program very easily. And it was something that, like you said, snowballed kind of effortlessly, I feel like, in some way, shape, or form. I'm certain there was extra efforts behind the scenes to make it all happen as effortlessly as it looked like from a player's perspective. But it couldn't have hurt to have the kind of campaigning that Stan and Paul Caney did for the program so early on.
Yeah, they were tremendous. And to this day, they remain tremendous. To this day, that entire group of young men it remains close. As you well know, we were all together at a wedding a couple of months ago for one of the members of that team and that program. And obviously had a terrific time. And there was under the tip of the iceberg, there is a lot that goes on that a lot of people don't know about. But one of the unique parts of that story in terms of building the program was your recruitment. And I can't remember if you knew this or not, but I received a phone call from admissions and I wasn't in the office. And there was a note stuck on my desk that said that there was a young man who was an architecture major who would be on campus. And his name was Dalton Deerdorf from DeLone Catholic. And I still, in my mind, remember seeing that little yellow Post-it note next to my phone that somebody had put there. And the first thing that we do is we Google. And I immediately, pulled your name up and saw your numbers. And I knew that we had a program architecture and you wanted architecture that would be incredibly helpful with respect to recruiting you. And I think I kind of jumped on that pretty hard at that point. And that you were on campus, we met, and that wasn't the first time we talked because you were a critical recruit, further legitimizing our program. Hard to legitimize your program without young men who are first and foremost good people, but secondly, good students. But if you want to have a championship team, you have to have players as well. And you were one of the first people in that whole scenario that unfolded that I think continued to allow it to unfold for us and build again. And I'll keep saying this, and I'll say it till the day I'm no longer here. We're one of the greatest group of young men that I've ever had the honor and privilege to be around.
I can truly appreciate that.
I can attest for that since I'm the outsider looking in. As most of our listeners know, that I was actually a lacrosse player during my years at Marywood. And luckily I was able to, I befriended Paul like immediately freshman year. We have different sides of the story. If you want to ask him, he'll tell you something completely different. It's the complete opposite of what he'll tell you. But besides the point, him and I walked side by side because we were both the same major, business administration, marketing and management. And I just basically kind of saw the entire thing unfold from the program all the way to the camaraderie to what it stands today and like what you left. And it was just like remarkable to see that in that short time period from, at first it was just a thought, then it became a club, and then it became this whole thing, and then it became this family. And I mainly saw that when Stan actually invited me for the alumni tournament you guys had at Helmhurst a couple years ago, and that's actually where I met Dalton for the first time.
That was an incredible day.
It was, and then we went to was Morgan's afterwards, and just
Where's
hearing the
that? I've never
stories,
been there.
and just like from the stories to from what Paul and Stan have, what they put forward, and the stuff that I heard. I mean, it was just remarkable to see because I saw it from basically ground, from the bottom of the ground all the way up. So it was just awesome to see and how much was accomplished in that such short period of time. So anybody out there listening, this is one hell of a team during my time up at good old Marywood.
Dante, making that even more remarkable is the fact that somebody from the outside looking in, obviously myself and Dalton being on the inside, but somebody from the outside looking in, looking at that and seeing that. And, maybe in an indirect way, and now more direct than ever before, now becoming part of that. It's really a fascinating thing and a very heartwarming thing for me to see somebody like yourself having seen what we went through and what we did, what we accomplished, the highs and the lows, the fights, the good times, the bad times, and all of those things. But to have somebody from the outside see it and now be a part of it. Interesting to me that our program it continues to grow to this day, bringing in and having people like you along with it. So that's pretty cool to me.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, it was definitely awesome to see because a lot of the stories, I'm obviously getting from go to Paul, and I would like turn, I'm like, what? Wait, what's happening now? And it was just.
We've mentioned Paul a number of times. Paul was a 3-time all-league player and a 3-time in the first 3-time MVP.
Yeah.
Of our program. So Paul was aside from being somebody with as high a moral character as I've ever been around, Paul's a heck of a player too.
And there's something incredible. I think you both mentioned it kind of countless times there, was just like how you don't really sometimes see it from the inside when you're on the team. And, it's kind of, just now we're able to sit back and look at it. It's times past. But when I was kind of, taking the visit and sat down in the Hall of Fame room up at Marywood and met you and sat down with my parents for the first time. And, from that moment where I kind of just made my decision to go until graduation, I don't want to say it was a blur, but everything just moved so fast between
so
golf,
fast.
Actual academics that we were at school for, and just everything and all the traveling that, like, it's crazy now to look back on it and see just the strides we did make as a program. And it sometimes you forget to put it in perspective of like, yeah, we were 3 years old, 4 years old when we made our, as a team, a first national championship appearance. And you don't see that too often of teams that go from kind of club to NCAA, officially recognized team, and then all of a sudden make an appearance on a national scale like that. And, I'd love to get into that a little bit too. When you made the switch from basketball full-time to golf, what was the dichotomy of the team like that differed from basketball? And like, how does that team really work within a golf program?
It's an interesting question. And I could go a lot of different ways with that. And I can tell you that over time, my perspective, my perceptions, and my thoughts on that have changed. When it first started, you think of from my background, having, been a college basketball coach for 28 years, 20 as a head coach. And, you're always thinking about, not just getting, 5 young men to play together. You're trying to not only get those 5 young men to play together, but those 12 or 13 or 14 young men, to be a team and to have one common agenda. And you always talk with them about, we don't number our players. And you probably remember me saying this, we don't number our players 1 through 12. I have 12 number ones. Building a basketball team and building a golf team are similar in many ways, but they're different in other ways. When I coach a basketball game, I can call timeout. I can substitute a player in. When a player is not playing particularly well, there are stoppages in play where I can instruct and coach. From a golf perspective, I've got 5 guys out on a course, all spread out all over a course in different areas of a course. And, it's hard to get to all 5 of them. especially when you're trying to be like one of them and walk rather than ride a cart. Some of those courses I did have to ride a cart, but I more often than not did try to walk. And when you hear that somebody 3 holes up is struggling a little bit, and you want to get up there, it takes a little while. It takes a little longer to get up there if you're on foot. But that being said, golf is an individual sport when you throw them out on the course and they're out there by themselves alone. That's where it's an individual sport. When it's going bad, it's going bad. I can't sub in and out for you. Obviously in a team sport such as basketball, I can sub for you. I can call a timeout and bring the whole team together. I can talk to the team, about supporting that individual. On a golf course, I can't talk to the player in front of you and the player behind you about support. I have to be the one that's there to support you. Philosophically, if you might, recall, one of my philosophies or one of my thought processes over the course of time with our golfers was, when things were going well, stay away and get out of the way and let them play. And when things weren't going well, get near your guys and support them. Don't instruct them and don't coach them, because you have really, really good players and they know how to play, but they just need you there, knowing that you're there for them and supporting them, and no matter what, through thick and thin. So yeah, at the end of the day, those individual players, as they come off the course and you begin to add up four of the low 4 scores of 5 scores, that's where it becomes a team sport. At the end of the day, the number 1 score is no less important than the number 4 score, because you add them all together and they form a team score. And that's where it becomes, in terms of the final score, that's where it becomes a team sport. But when they're out there competing, at that time it's individual. But when they're finishing up or before the match, when you're having a conversation and sending them out there to go play, we always play for the name on the front of your chest or on the bag. That's where that team portion of it comes together. Certainly out on the course, there are times when you as a coach know what the overall picture looks like and who's doing what and what scores are, and you need player A or B to maybe not make some gambles or make some decisions that could affect the team in a way. But you got to be careful in that way. I learned that the hard way with Mike Thomas the second year at the national tournament. Hopefully on the last hole. Hopefully we don't get to that.
Hey, it's funny because, so many people, when they think of like golf coach, just automatically go to swing, and that they forget about the side of coaching that is, like you said, is like the college coach or the high school coach, is the course management side of things. And it's like you said, when you have someone that you're probably got 3 guys in at a score you need, and you need someone to not make triple. Let's just make par, bogey at worst. So maybe, like you said, you don't take that gamble. It's kind of the side of things a lot of people, I feel like, on the outside looking in, don't really realize that as part of coaching is really the course management side of things, and helping kids maybe make decisions that they wouldn't typically make. If you got a bomber out there that usually always goes for the green in 2, you might have to just kind of reel them in and say, hey, let's just make par here. You don't need to make eagle.
Well, you probably very well remember, and we will revisit a little bit, but coaches they learn all the time too. And I did learn on the last hole of the conference championship, when I went down and talked to Mike Thomas, one of the greatest student athletes, as you are, and all of you are, but one of the greatest student athletes in the history of Marywood University. But I did learn that about the last thing you need to do on the last hole is to go down and tell your number 1 player, don't screw this up. Don't do anything crazy. And then some crazy stuff happened, but fortunately we had enough of a cushion. But
I was going to say,
had to do that all over again, I wouldn't have done that.
I never throw blame, but I don't think he has one of the best short games I've ever seen from, a fellow player on our team in all 4 years I was there. And yeah, I don't think the coaching practices in that instance helped Mike Thomas get up and down for an easy par in that scenario.
And I would say, give me credit for admitting that the coaching at that point was left little to be desired. Dalton, I want to go back, and I don't want to control the conversation. There's something that's in my mind that we started talking about in terms of the recruitment aspect of this whole thing, and the word recruit or recruitment was used. And I'm not sure that you ever were led into this, or any of you, because it was just a philosophical thought of mine. And it's something, here in the position that I'm in at Ferrum College, that I'm going to begin to have conversations with our team, and the team that I don't coach, but the team that I lead now is a dean of admissions, a director of financial aid, and then they have, the players underneath them, which are the admissions counselors. And the admissions counselors are, they would be the golfers or the basketball players that came here, or that are going out and trying to encourage prospective students or prospective student athletes to come to Ferrum College, or like they did at Marywood, or like I did at Marywood. One of the thoughts that I have, or one of the things that I really try to practice and preach, and I'm going to do that here, is lose the word recruit. We don't recruit. Because to me, and I think you, yourself and Dante, I think both of you will appreciate this. And the proof is in the pudding, because we're all here tonight. The reason we don't recruit is because, to me, recruiting is, you recruit somebody for 4 years. What I tried to do, and what I'll try to continue to do with the team I have here, is to not have them recruit. And I kind of want them to lose that word from their vocabulary. I want them to build, develop, and cultivate relationships. Everybody else that's talking to them will recruit them. And a recruit is for 4 years. A relationship is for a lifetime. And isn't it funny, isn't it interesting that we're here tonight? And this thing is a lifetime between myself and you, and I'm sure it will be between Dante and all those people who were at that wedding a couple of weeks ago. If you remember, while you were being recruited, I said one of the most important things that could happen was that when you graduate, you come back, one, and play in the alumni tournament, and two, I get an invitation to your wedding. And if those two things happen, if you come back, and if I come to your wedding, then I probably did my job, you did your job, the whole thing worked out. And isn't it interesting where we are today, having this conversation? We were at a wedding a month ago.
I'm so glad you brought it up, and it's so true. I mean, it just it couldn't be more true to what our situation, between the golf team at Marywood has ended up being. I talk to the guys still pretty consistently. They're a core group of not only friends, but people I lean on, to just talk about anything. And I challenge people to maybe find that in their other, teams across the country. I feel like there's not a large majority of teams that still have that kind of camaraderie and like brotherhood that we've built at Marywood within our golf team. And that's something special. And it goes back to just, how you kind of approached it and coached us, and just kind of let us, become this family. And that's all kudos to you.
Well, and I thank you, Dalton. And I would say, go back to when you said teams all across the country. The teams are exist in many forms. They're not just athletic teams. I have a team in the enrollment management division here at Ferrum College, and I have to lead that team. Our president, Dr. David Johns, who I met just one short month ago, is now the leader of the Ferrum team. And I can tell you, he is an incredibly dynamic, energetic, pragmatic, forward thinker who I really believe is somebody that will mentor me along, that will, for lack of a better word, coach me along. But I'm really excited to be in a position where I'm being led by somebody who I really, in a very short period of time, have a great deal of respect for and I can't wait to learn from him. But just go back to the teams come in a lot of ways, a lot of different shapes and forms. And I think, when you're working for a team and selling something, if you believe in what you sell, the easiest way to sell what you believe in is to build a relationship with that person that you're selling to, rather than just try to sell the product to them.
Yeah, no, it's 100% true, and couldn't agree more. And you hit it nail on the head. There's not just sports teams. There's teams everywhere in every aspect of life, and that kind of what we just talked about can be applied to any and all teams, and how they approach the way they build. So. But let's get back into golf. I'm interested to see what your thoughts were when we made that national championship appearance for the first time. It was back in 2015, and like I said, it was 3 or 4 years, into the program itself. From a coach's perspective, going through the growing pains of getting everything set up, recruiting, getting that kind of first high caliber team in place. What was it like as a coach to kind of just look upon that and say, we've gotten maybe step one taken care of. We've gotten an elite team to a national championship. How did that viewpoint from a coach's perspective kind of look, and how do you approach that to say we can build on this year?
Well, going back to the first year where we won the conference championship, and then made the appearance in the national championship, which coincidentally that course is in Greensboro, which is 1 hour south of where I am right now. So I expect to make a trip down to Greensboro sometime soon to relive those old memories. But what does it look like, that group, that first championship, and getting to the NCAA championship? First of all, what it looks like is amazing to me, that things were able to come together in such a short period of time. But I think, looking back at it, it was, while it was never easy, it was always enjoyable, because we were just very fortunate to have been able to identify some really outstanding young men, some outstanding young students, and obviously we put together a collection of really, really good players. And as you well know, at that point, or at any time, we were competing in a national event, and keeping in mind that very few teams in the Northeast compete on a national level, and we were doing it in year 4. St. John Fisher, one of the better programs in the country, competes on a national level year in and year out. But we were in Greensboro, North Carolina, as a team from the Northeast, competing against teams from down south who play all year long, competing against teams from out west and the southwest, and all over the country in warm weather areas. And after day one, I believe we were in about 12th place, I think, after day one. I'm not sure. At about the 15th hole on day 2, I know that we were in 12th place, and we had a chance to be top 15 and move to day 3 and 4. And I'm not sure we were ready for the moment at that point, but looking back at the whole thing, and what it meant to me from a success standpoint, in terms of the scores that we put up and the records that we set, and finishing 20th in the country, I'm proud of that, certainly. And how could you not be? But I'm more proud, as we sit here today, of looking back at those young men, at how they handled their success. They always handled their success. And all the tournaments, the tournaments that we won, and all the medalists that we produced, and the all-conference players that we produced, how we always handled things. And golf can sometimes be incredibly humbling and frustrating. And we just seem to always handle things in a way that was really, really professional, that was really mature. All the time, no, but most of the time we did. And I think, that says something about the character of the young men that we had, in that group.
Yeah.
So the thing that I look back at and see, and that's most important to me, is how we used golf to build those skills, throughout the course of their golf careers. And they were able to take those skills and use them, certainly on the golf course, but take those skills and use them in life. And after all, isn't that what college sports or college golf is about? Especially at the Division III level, it's about building young men or building young women, and teaching them, to be humble, but to stay hungry, and teaching them to compete. They're not doing it for a scholarship. They're not getting paid to do it. They're doing it for the love of the game. And it probably is the truest form of competition, Division III athletics. It quite literally is the truest form of competition. You're not pressured to play. You play because you love the game, whether it be football, basketball, or golf, or any other sport. You don't play it in front of a lot of fans. You play it because you have a love for the game and a pride and standards that you set for yourself and for your teammates, and you play it hopefully because you've been led in a way. But going back to what it meant to me, or what did I see? I saw growth and development of a group of young men that continues to this day, and I saw a family form, develop, come together, and that family still exists to this day.
Yeah, one of the things you said, I think, just need to touch on real quick is just the kind of the character you said all the players kind of just showed during times of success. And I think, shout out to our parents for that. We were all kind of very fortunate to be in a Division III program where a lot of our parents at some way, shape, or form crossed paths, met each other. We met their parent, each other's parents. And to say that, all of our parents or guardians were just outstanding individuals and helped us, understand how to handle the success and how to handle it with some pride, some class, and the way we did throughout the times we experienced success. I just wanted to give a quick shout out to all of our parental figures. That they were the reason we were able to handle all of that success.
You're darn right, and I would say hello, Mr. and Mrs. Deerdorf. I do miss you dearly. They were as supportive of our program and of me as anybody possibly could be. All of those parents, and on top of the parents, going back, the great, God rest his soul, Gino Biondi, who was always there for us, always supporting us and supporting his grandson, Nicholas Biondi. That group of people, Mr. Thomas, the Kenyas, and the Mancinellis, and they were at every match, or darn near every match, and they were, some of them were making significant trips to get to those matches. So, Jesse Bingaman's godparents and his aunt and uncle, Frank, the DeRosas, those people were instrumental. Not only were the players instrumental in our success, but they were instrumental in our success. But they were instrumental in our success not just from a score standpoint, but from instilling those values in young men that continue on to this day.
Absolutely. Yeah. Had to slip that in there and give them some shout outs because it's well deserved and most definitely necessary.
I have pictures of mom and dad in my phone still on their knickers and in the team outfit from for our alumni tournament, and they will always be.
Yeah. Remember that.
I was just saying, hey, when Payne Stewart grew up as your father's idol, sometimes you just have to honor the late greats and put on some knickers.
Classic. Both Payne Stewart and your dad.
Absolutely. No, it's it's really cool just kind of to look back on it all. And I had texted you this a few times before, and I don't think we truly, other than maybe the alumni event, which Dante, you were at, got to just sit down with everyone who was a part of the organization and the team and just everything that, assistant coaches in the past, parents and everyone just together. I think we've only been able to really do that once. And it was just really cool to kind of, as Dante and I started gathering everything and looking back on what we did as a team, was just like, what a cool experience it was to be at Marywood and to not only have you as a coach, but just to develop these relationships that, like you said, looking back on it, we brought a majority of the team together to go to a fellow teammate's wedding, no less than, 4 months ago. So it's really cool to look back on it and see it all and see the, family we've developed throughout the entire, what we originally thought we're just going to play college golf turned into so much more.
And yeah,
Absolutely.
and that's some of the best parts too. And like Coach, like you were saying that, you throw this word in recruit, that's, hey, we're bringing in you for 4 years. But what we really want is we want to bring you 4 years, get a great education, play the sport that you love, but also develop these relationships and friendships that'll last a lifetime. And it goes from the alumni game or the alumni round that we had for the golf team, and then the alumni games that I've played in with my team. And that's what it's really all about, because you bring in these kids from, I'm talking the kids that played in 2015, 2016, and 2017, and so on. I wasn't there. I walked across the stage in 2013, but you bring this family to come back together and you reminisce on the good times. You talk about, well, this is how we did it before. Here's some of the stories that we went through. Here's some of the ups and downs that we went through. And then you get to hear some of the stories from people kids that played on the team that you've never met. And then you just immediately gained like a new friend. You have this bond, this trust with this new person that you just met for the first time, that now, hey, we were part of the same family at different times, but now we're able to take that into the future.
Well, that's it's interesting that you say that, because if you think back to the lacrosse, I was there when lacrosse started at Marywood, when Coach Mick Grant was the first coach. And Coach Mick Grant is actually just up the road from us at Bridgewater State College, a couple hours up the road. But
yeah,
you're absolutely right, Dante. It is, think back. When you come to college and you're kind of a green freshman, you don't really, you live day by day. You have a little bit of a different perspective than when you get out a year or two, and then you start to look back and you think back, what did I learn? I learned a lot in the classroom, and I learned a lot from the faculty. One of the great things that playing a college sport does is it certainly gives you memories. It certainly teaches you to compete. It certainly teaches you to manage your time wisely, or hopefully, and many, many other things. But it also, it develops relationships, which is, one of the core things that we're talking about in this conversation. And it connects you to your university. Dalton, I don't know if you remember this, but I really like to refer to this quite a bit, and you may remember me referring to, when you're building a team, I kind of look at it as almost in a sense of a hunk of iron ore. And you may remember this analogy, but you look at a hunk of iron ore, and you want to make a sword out of that iron ore. How do you make a sword? You heat it. You put it under intense, incredible heat, and then you pound on it. You hammer away at it, and then you put it in water and shock it. And then you do it again, and you do it again, and you do it again. And over time, the extreme heat that you're under, the pounding that you take, and the shocks that you experience, what it forms is it forms a sword out of that ugly piece of iron, or what you thought was an ugly piece of iron. That's what all of you went through. That's what all of you went through individually as players, and that's what all of you individually went through as a team. You went through constant pounding, some more than others. You were always under the fire, and you were shocked quite a bit. But what it formed, hopefully what it formed is the young men that you are and the team that we were. And I have to give a plug or a shout out to Ferrum College, because you don't know this, and our president keeps telling me this. Ferrum means iron. So what better place could I have landed than at a place where with a guy who believes in that story that I just told you? What better place for me to land than at a place that means iron? And all of you became those incredibly strong forged steel swords who can cut through anything in life now, and who can handle anything in life. So Dalton knows I'm the metaphor or the analogy guy, but I think that's a pretty good one to
I do remember sitting through many metaphors in your office, early mornings, late evenings. Like you said, you have metaphors to last us a lifetime, I believe. But kind of just going off of that, it's so true. Is that you just constantly are under pressure and then shocked. And I think one more story I want to go through, and then we'll let you go here this evening. But
It's going to be a good story, or
it's a little combination of both.
okay.
It's got good, it's got bad.
No Carrabba's.
We were under some heat.
Oh man.
In that last we were under some heat in that last round of conference championships, and we got some shock from probably one of the least expected members to shock our team. We received a group text message. Now, what exactly that group message said, I'll leave for other times. Mike Thomas sent us a text message before the last round. We were sitting about third place in the conference championships, and shout out to Mike, because it couldn't have come from anyone else in the team, and I think had the effect that it did for saying what he said. Mike being a very reserved individual who chooses his times to speak kind of wisely and for better or for worse, but he shocked our team late Thursday or late on the second day. And going into that final round, we kind of all rallied around what Mike Thomas had to say, and was basically, for better words, don't let people come into our house and take our championship. And I want to talk on that a little bit too. Like, from a coach's perspective, when you're trying to rally the troops from behind like that, when we're all kind of pissed off that we didn't play well the first day, we're all really not happy going into the second day, just not very looking optimistic. What does it mean as a coach for one of your players who usually don't step up and motivate like that to take the spotlight and motivate an entire team in a time when you're really not sure if we're going to come out on top or not?
Well, I think it's a great question. It's an interesting question. I think, talking about leadership, I think sometimes the greatest form of leadership, or the greatest decision that a leader can make is from my perspective, that day two, is to just step back and let the players figure it out. And we had a mature group of young men, and those players figured it out because one of those players took a leadership approach, or he made a decision as a leader. And, when you're, was Mike our best player? He was certainly our best player with respect to his scoring average, with respect to the number of matches or times he was a medalist. Certainly, there's obviously a great argument, maybe not even an argument, that Mike was our best individual player. We have of many, many great players. But that being said, when your best player, think about Mike Jordan. When your best player is your hardest worker, when your best player is your most humble guy, when your best player doesn't say a whole lot, when he does say something, when he's that humble, hardworking guy who sets an example for others to follow by, when he says very little, and then when the time comes and he figures out it's time for me to say something, then it's heard. And that is true leadership. That to me is true leadership. And what I took from that was, wow, it was a very interesting way that he went about it. Shocking, as you said, but it really made an impact. And you could see, golf shouldn't be a particularly emotional sport. And you could see the fire in everybody's eyes. And at that point, I don't know if you remember back to that day, but my job was done at that point for the day. Just stay out of the way and let you guys go play. And here's another plug. Stay out of the way and let you guys go play. And you know what I did that day? I really enjoyed the walk. I really enjoyed that walk that day. And it ended in a way that was incredibly positive with another conference championship. And it ended with a bunch of young men who had become leaders themselves, and the quietest one led in a way that was most effective.
Yeah, absolutely. It was just cool as a player. You know, it was for many of us our last competitive round as a Pacer. That you know, not guaranteeing if we won or not. You know, to go on and play more tournament golf. So it was definitely a text message that was well received from, you know, the seniors on the team, and kind of was just looked upon as, you know, he's right. So it's our last chance to ever stand up, you know, in gold or in green, and have a say on if we can win or not. So it was really neat to get that, like you said, from the quietest guy on the team at most times. And it was a lot of fun. That Sunday round was a lot of fun, knowing that we were kind of all fired up equally.
He was our Jordan, wasn't he?
He was. There's no doubt about it. So shout out to you, Mike Thomas. You know, it's I will forever strap it up and play with Mike any day, anytime, anywhere.
We will. I think we know this too. We will all be together, all of us, sometime soon. That's what families do, and I think you know that we will be together. We're just in different places. We will always be together, but we will physically get together sometime soon. I wouldn't be surprised if it's sometime this summer, if, you know, we get to the back end of this thing. I do, not a shout out, but to those that are listening or to watching, you know, as we grapple with this whole COVID-19 global pandemic thing, I hope and pray that all of those in our family, all of your families, and anybody else who's listening, I hope you're staying safe. I hope you're staying healthy. I hope you're staying home. And I hope that we can get to the back side of this, or the back end of this, sooner rather than later, so that we can all get back together again and reminisce and enjoy and talk about all those times.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's like we said just before we got on air, but you know, we don't know what the back end of it's going to look like. All we can do is hope and pray that it comes soon, and it comes without too many, you know, complications along the way. So, Coach, really appreciate you joining us. You know, it's always great to just sit down and talk, and look forward to doing hopefully a little bit more of this, you know, in person once all this subsides. So, again, that is Eric Grundman, now with Ferrum College, and excited to just see the way that you thrive in your new position there, and hopefully have you back on the show sometime soon.
Brotherhood lives on, guys. Thank you.
That's the stuff. One shot at a time.